I like to talk about how really good revenue management is kind of like playing chess on 4 different levels. You've got to think, anticipate, predict, analyze both mistakes and wins to come up with the right strategy. Not everybody's going to get that. It's hard to teach to. So if somebody is teaching a revenue management class and their entire career has been in academia, meaning they've not applied this knowledge, it makes it really hard to translate the reality of what revenue management is today to students. When I was writing the revenue management curriculum at Oklahoma State, in our curriculum review committees, I had tenured professors saying, well, that class belongs in the finance track. I'm like, no, it doesn't. It's not, I'm not going to be teaching finance related things. Right. Do we deal with data? Absolutely. Are we looking at trend lines? Absolutely. Are we all those things, but it's from an application, it's not the same thing. And I was given the freedom to teach the class in the way I wanted to teach it. And I had success. I had students that probably wouldn't think that I'm good at math, but I could be good at revenue management, right? The challenge is 30 years ago when I got into the industry, it was large like that, but it was mostly small business. These days, our industry has turned into Wall Street, large corporations, real estate investment trusts, all the major brands are publicly traded companies. So what you have is this shift of priority. And the people, in my opinion, over the last 20, 25 years that have been left behind are owners, team members, and guests. Now, not all owners. Some owners are well served by the model we have. Team members is probably where I'm most passionate about. I feel like we've lost a lot of great human capital and valuable team members from our industry. At the end of the day, we in the hotel business, these are businesses. They exist to generate profit. I've been in the business for 30 years. Profit margins have never been smaller than they are. Competition has never been as fierce as it is. The brands continue to proliferate like layers of different brands. 20 years ago, there might be 6 or 8 brands within a parent company. Now there's 30, and so it's gotten really competitive. And when it comes to how do you maximize your profit when you have rising costs, more competitive demand, you've got to find ways to gain efficiencies for profitability's sake. Enter in fractional sales, which is kind of what we're talking about.
So I'm here doing a first time ever live podcast interview here at our Lighthouse office. And I have the esteemed, the famous, and the acclaimed David Davis, founder of FUSED Topline. And actually, David was a professor for many years at multiple universities, right?
But just Oklahoma State.
Just Oklahoma State. And actually taught a lot of people that actually work up here at Lighthouse in both the RSS department and our customer care team. So you want to do a quick little intro, David, and then we can get into some of the questions?
Sure. Yeah, happy to be here. It's always a delight to see where former students kind of end up, and having done business and worked with Lighthouse, both before Lighthouse when it was Korea and even OTA Insight, seeing how our industry is evolving in this discipline and how students are able to turn interest they had at a college level into a career is extremely rewarding and satisfying for an old professor like me.
Yeah. All right. So, David, let's talk a little bit about revenue management education. So, you just said you were an educator for many years there at Oklahoma State. And I want to talk a little bit about, I guess, like the current state of revenue management education, what it looks like, because all of your former students really rave about you and your education. But at the same time, I also feel like a lot of kids who are maybe coming from school who didn't take your classes, I think a lot of the revenue management education that's out there right now is maybe a little skews towards the academic. Mm-hmm. And earlier when you came in, we were talking about kind of that applied versus academic dichotomy, if you will. So can you kind of talk about like the current state of the revenue management curriculum, what you think kids should be learning if they want to start a career in revenue management, and kind of the value of that applied education and not just going off of a textbook when it comes to learning revenue management?
That's a great question. And I will, for my own story, I was not prepared either. My first job out of college over 25 years ago was as a revenue manager, and I had never even heard of it. Back then, we weren't even teaching it in school, yet some crazy hotel company offered me a job called revenue manager. And so I had to learn on the fly. I learned from the brands, I learned from a mentor and people that I had around me. And so if you fast forward in my career, when I did get into higher education and I had the benefit of designing the curriculum, both at the undergrad and graduate level for revenue management at OSU, I was extremely excited because I got to bring over at that point in time, a decade of management experience in revenue management and sales into the classroom. And so I knew revenue management had already evolved greatly by then, and it's evolved since then. We went from individual hotel revenue managers to clusters to now we have third-party companies and the brands and everybody else do it in a variety of ways. But what is the hardest thing for an educator is finding the balance between, some people would call them soft skills, like what are the soft skills that it takes to be successful in any job? And then what are the hard skills? In revenue management, we don't have really a lot of hard skilled jobs in hospitality. Revenue management, data analysis, these types of jobs are an exception. And so you have to be able to teach in a way that allows a student to start to develop critical thinking skills. I like to talk about how really good revenue management is kind of like playing chess on 4 different levels. You've got to think, anticipate, predict, analyze both mistakes and wins to come up with the right strategy. And that not everybody's going to get that. It's hard to teach to. So the kind of long way around to get to your question, Daniel, is if somebody is teaching a revenue management class and their entire career has been in academia, meaning they've not applied this knowledge, it makes it really hard to translate the reality of what revenue management is today to students. And so that gives opportunities for simulators, for game theory, case study work, those types of things, which are great ways of teaching. But the challenge educators have is grading. It's harder to be more, you can't be as objective. Yep. It's hard to have objectivity in some of those essay, case study, narrative type situations. And so it's not an easy class to take. Mm-hmm. When I used to bring revenue management exams home for grading, my wife would always roll her eyes and my kids would bemoan because I would read essays for hours because that's what it takes. It's not like checking a box. And so anyway, it's difficult to do it well, which is probably why a lot of academicians don't do it well. That's probably the best way to say it.
Nice. Cool. So that was an excellent point. I do want to ask you, and just to kind of expand on that a little bit more. So one thing that I think I hear from maybe new hires that are starting as revenue managers is when they were in school, they thought that revenue management was almost kind of like, I'm not going to say accounting, but almost more like a math theoretical. They think it's this kind of topic. And then they go into work as operations or as a wedding planner, an event planner or something like that. And they realize like, oh my gosh, this is really hard work. I'm not able to work weekends. I have no personal life. And then they end up kind of coming back to revenue management and then saying like, oh, I didn't realize that revenue management was so fun, or this is what it was all about. And that kind of ties in with what you were saying earlier. But, what can what can educators do different, do you think, to kind of show students what revenue management really is in the classroom, so they don't have to go through that long circuitous journey to come back to revenue management?
It's an excellent question. So my strong opinion on this would be stop allowing traditional academics to teach these classes.
Yeah.
If there was ever an opportunity to hire an adjunct, and Adam, Dick, and I had this conversation a couple weeks ago, if there was ever a class or opportunity to hire really good adjuncts, this is the class. Because you want somebody that certainly has to have the experience, skills to be a good teacher, right? Mm-hmm. They've got to be an effective teacher, but has the ability to translate exactly what you said. Because you're right, the responsibility is in education, and here's why. When I was writing the revenue management curriculum at Oklahoma State, in our curriculum review committees, I had tenured professors saying, well, that class belongs in the finance track.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, it doesn't. It's not. I'm not going to be teaching finance related things.
Right.
Do we deal with data? Absolutely. Are we looking at trend lines? Absolutely. Are we all those things? But it's not, from an application, it's not the same thing.
Right.
And I was given the freedom to teach the class in the way I wanted to teach it. And I had success. I had students that probably wouldn't think that I'm good at math, but I could be good at revenue management,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Because it is different. It's not debits and credits, and it's not, those types of things. It's a different form of number play. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons that I love what I do now with our company, is getting to fuse that skill set knowledge of sales mm-hmm. with great revenue strategy is extremely good. It's rewarding, and it's great for our clients, good for the industry. And academia, I will guarantee you could go to many universities. There's hundreds of hospitality programs across the country, and most academics think of revenue management belongs in a finance track.
Right.
And it's just not the case.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I find that revenue management is kind of that perfect balance for, like, I love numbers and accounting, and, I majored in finance, but it's definitely not theoretical math, and mm-hmm. it's definitely not, you're not calculating like the future value, and you're not doing like compounding interest and stuff like that. So if you still like data analysis, revenue management is like, it's perfect.
And it's a fun version of data analysis. So some of the practices we use have to do with evaluating stay controls in the hospitality hotel business. One of the most limiting factors of our business transaction is we only have so many rooms to sell every night.
Right.
And when there's a demand surplus, we can't go make more rooms. So we've got to be very thoughtful about how we sell rooms. Well, that gets into time, length of stay, price, and all these other things that we can have a little bit of control and influence on. Like, we can choose when to sell a room, at what time, at what price. And that's when it becomes, again, you're not crunching numbers in a math sense, but you're analyzing patterns of behavior. You're mm-hmm. looking at what is really going to be the best mix of types of clients that are going to generate the most profit for my clients. Mm-hmm. And that's fun. And when you start to do that, so if you're not great at math, that's okay. You can have an amazing career in revenue management.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of the few disciplines where I feel like you can have ownership of a strategy, be creative with that strategy, implement it, and then actually see results in a relatively short amount of time, right? Because a lot of jobs that you go into, especially right out of college, is, if you're doing like financial analyst or something like that, a lot of that work most of the time is going to be pretty abstract, right? And you're not going to see the results of what you're doing. But that's what's so cool about revenue management, is every single night is almost like a little experiment, right? And you get to try all these different things out, and then get that real-time feedback, which is I've always thought it's been really, really fun.
And sometimes you don't even have to wait till the end of the night. I remember when I was in college, which was a long time ago, we took a group of students, we went out to Las Vegas, and we got to see a behind the scenes reservation department, like this massive reservation department. And revenue management wasn't even really talked about back then. But what this hotel company was doing, where they had algorithms created that would change their price by the minute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because they're selling thousands of rooms every minute. And so, like, they could say, okay, we anticipate China's going to wake up in 6 hours, so we're going to turn these rates on here. And this was back in Vegas's heyday. And they would see it within 30 minutes, and then they would change strategy. And so it's a constant 24-hour-a-day operation.
That's
awesome.
Was
pretty cool.
That's crazy. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about, so you're a founder of FUSED Topline.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys, I would say, almost kind of do like the total commercial strategy package, right?
Not complete, but yes.
So you have revenue, sales. Yeah, is that kind of the two core, and then yeah.
We do a little bit of ad spending for clients, but we're not marketers.
Gotcha.
We flirted with the idea of adding a marketing element for like social media and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And we're a young company. I mean, we've been doing this for a few years. but we really want to hone our craft in remote sales. Mm-hmm. And then the revenue management is this side where we find it's crucial that our sales specialists understand revenue management. Mm-hmm. And we do employ a couple of revenue managers because we have some clients that want that service from us on both ends, but it's really more of a utility of what's the best thing for our client. The best thing for our client is to have all or part of your sales engine that can speak the language of price, duration control, time, booking windows, and these types of things to help advise our clients. Mm-hmm. Because what we find in today's world post-COVID, general managers, they're new. We've had a lot of turnover in the industry. Mm-hmm. They're handling a lot more than they used to be operationally, and things slip through the cracks without that. So I would say our base and bread and butter is remote sales, with the fact that we don't believe in separating the two. And one of the reasons we started the company was I interviewed our current competitors, and I was shocked when they said things like, we don't get involved in revenue management. We stay in our lane of sales. And just as a former professor that taught this stuff, I was floored, because while they are two different disciplines, they almost share a lane, which is profitable revenue generation and control for a hotel client.
Exactly.
So it's not two different lanes you're in. You're sharing a lane. Mm-hmm. And so you've got to speak the language, you've got to participate, or at a bare minimum, you have to understand what strategy the hotel and the revenue manager believe is the best thing, so that you can go out and sell those rates and sell those clients.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, because this is before my current role. Obviously, I worked at a different company, and I was doing above property revenue management. Mm-hmm. And I had a portfolio of 15, maybe almost 20 hotels at times. And what was kind of funny was I was the one revenue manager for that 15 or 20 hotels. And these were just select service hotels, right? But each of those properties still had their own DOS. Can you kind of talk about maybe like efficiencies within the sales model and how you identified that? I'm not sure if you use like the task force like verbiage, but how you noticed that opportunity, to where I'm surprised more companies haven't woken up and said like, hey, we need to do more of like an above property sales program, like what we're already doing with revenue. Can you kind of talk through like some of the efficiencies there that companies might be missing out on?
Yeah, I think the additional word I would use in efficiency is also profit. Mm-hmm. Because that's really, at the end of the day, we in the hotel business, these are businesses. They exist to generate profit. And I've been in the business for 30 years. Profit margins have never been smaller than they are. Mm-hmm. Competition has never been as fierce as it is. The brands continue to proliferate like layers of different brands. 20 years ago, there might be 6 or 8 brands within a manager or a parent company. Now there's 30. Mm-hmm. And so it's gotten really competitive. And when it comes to how do you maximize your profit when you have rising costs, more demand, or more competitive demand, mm-hmm. you've got to find ways to gain efficiencies for profitability's sake. Enter in fractional sales, which is kind of what we're talking about and what an outsourced company like ours would provide. But where it also, technology has changed the role of these DOSs to where there's a lot of information now flowing in and out of hotels through the brand, through meeting broker sites and hotel broker sites and all these things, to where a lot of times you're paying a good salary to a sales professional that ends up just sitting in the hotel at a desk. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, if anybody watching this has tried to get a new job in the last 10 years, it kind of feels like that, where mm-hmm. you apply with thousands of people digitally. It's hard to separate yourself. You don't ever know if an HR recruiter sees your information. Same thing with the general kind of RFP and or the pricing response through these brand systems is you're just a piece of paper or a digital readout of what this hotel says they can do. And you're missing a chance to build a relationship. A relationship is where lasting, profitable results come from. Mm-hmm. So with your DOSs, it's what can we do to get them out the door, to network, to drive business to the hotel, to host people, to do site visits. That takes not being bound to a desk in a hotel. It takes being able to go out. So a company like ours, we're a remote solution. We can do a lot of prospecting, right? Calling, finding out who are the influencers, who are the decision makers, what can we expect to get from this account. But my specialist who lives in Tennessee isn't going to go make a live sales call in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Right.
So a DOS can do that in that hotel. So what we do is we create solutions and scopes of services that allows that sales professional to go out in the market and sell, which is where we see the best results. And sometimes a lot of our clients, we are their only sales presence. So then we're trying to empower the GMs to be able to do that, or we're feeding information or scheduling site visits for the GMs. We're a pretty flexible company. And that was another reason we wanted to start the company is we saw in our competition, they were offering very narrow scopes of services that didn't allow for a lot of customization. We offer complete customized solutions. It's hard for us to advertise price because we don't just have a 3-tiered pricing model. We have a 3-tiered pricing model with variations in between based on what that hotel needs. Because even if it's a courtyard in this market, their needs are going to be different than a courtyard in a different market, maybe a tertiary market or a capital city or something like that.
What's the setup like for your team? Do they specialize based on region? Is it like, oh, hey, I'm familiar with this market, so you sign them to that market? Or is it more, your team is, hey, I'm really acquainted with the Marriott RFP process, like put me on Marriott hotels. Like what does your team organization look like, and how do you handle kind of those aspects of it?
It's a great question. There are many things that influence our decision. I would say the brand is probably one of the top 2 or 3. Like if they come from an IHG, every one of our specialists, by the way, is a previous operator. We have former general managers that work for us, former salespeople on property, former front desk managers. So everybody has some layer or level of operational experience. So we do try to fit them with where their expertise is. Our clients like that. However, that's not our number one. Our number one criteria, which we find to be unique, is we don't want to have a lot of deployment turnover. What that means, so the sales cycle is still about 9 to 12 months to acquire a new account. You can sometimes get lucky and it's shorter than that, but if you go out and truly prospect and try to bring a client in, you're talking about a 9 to 12 month courtship. And I have seen this proven time and time again within our customer base. So if you have a sales solution to where you're turning over and assigning a new salesperson to a new hotel, even within the same company, you lose momentum.
Right.
And so it's hard because sometimes we're like, well, so-and-so has more Marriott experience, so we should put them on that hotel. But this person has 16 months at this hotel. That's not a good time to pull them off of it because they are working now. Can they transition files and information? Sure, but it's still a change of energy. That client who you've been going after for 16 months has now got to know somebody else's name and email.
Right.
That's not the best thing for the client.
Yeah.
On the revenue management side, I think there's probably a little bit more chance to turn over deployment and change the revenue manager up because they aren't their relationship is direct with the property. Our relationship in the remote sales side is we're dealing with the client's client, our client's client.
Right.
And they need stability. They don't want to call and, oh, it's not Jim anymore, it's Rosie. Well, that's frustrating.
Yeah.
And so we don't do a lot of client turnover. We at our own expense, mentally and financially, I'm speaking for my co-founder, Danielle, we try our best to keep a specialist with their hotel for as long as humanly possible.
Yeah.
Because that turnover in a salesperson can be very costly.
What are just some of like your biggest wins, best moments so far since founding FUSED Topline? Like obviously you don't have to like mention anything super specific, but just like what's been the most rewarding part and what are some big wins that you've experienced so far as a founder since leaving?
Sure. Yeah, I would say the by far most rewarding thing for me is having former students that work in the company. Just similar to seeing former students here in your offices, it's for me seeing somebody that I could tell when they were an undergrad student were cream of the crop, really great. Just everything they did was amazing. And then to see that manifest 10 years later, 5 years later in adulthood, and they're making great decisions, and they're leading, learning, and doing all the things you hope they would do after they leave you at college, that's extremely rewarding. Like, it's hard to really explain what that feels like. The other part is, being a young company, I would say we're not really known in the industry, which is a frustration of ours, because we've not invested the time and energy to go do that, because we've grown so well through organic referrals from customers and whatnot. But what is rewarding is when I do tell people about the company, and people that have been in the industry for longer than I am, which I'm now an old guy, it's extremely rewarding to hear people say, that's a great idea. The way you're doing it is very helpful. I called an old mentor of mine a year after I started the company, and he was asking me about, why this, why that. I started a couple of companies at the same time in the same year. And he said, well, why did you start the second company? I said, well, I'm always afraid that the top line solutions, the FUSE, the sales and revenue management is not going to be a very weatherproof business, because when recessions hit, people will stop those contracts or whatever. And we always have recessions in the world. And he said, well, I think you should think about it differently. You might actually have an opportunity that thrives in a recession, because especially on the sales side, which is what we focus on, you're a fraction of the cost of a full-time employee.
Yeah.
And the way y'all do it, you might be able to, and I've never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
And so that was rewarding to hear affirmation from a 50-year veteran in the business say things like that. And he's worked for major brand management companies, et cetera. So that's very rewarding too. I would say that. I'd say the year we're having right now is rewarding as a business startup. If there's any business startup people listening, it's hard to start a business from the ground up, and it's exhausting financially. It's exhausting time-wise. And finally, we're reaching this point of stability where the fruit of 3 years of labor and stress and worry and financials is, we're not out of the woods yet, so to speak, but we're not a startup anymore. I would say we're kind of a mature startup. Mm-hmm. And Danielle, co-founder, and our director of revenue, Amanda, our strategy is as we start making money, we're going to reinvest that back in the company in the form of marketing, promotion, and getting our name out there. Because I do believe our company, we compete against some well-established brands on the remote sales side. They've been doing it for 10, 15 years, and we've got a long way to go. There's a lot of market to capture out there. Mm-hmm. And so we're excited about that.
Nice. And then just to kind of wrap up, is there anything else that you wanted to close on? Any passionate topics that you have, or any closing words that you have? And this could be even for people who want to become a revenue manager. This could even be for students or just anybody in general. Any thoughts about the state of the industry or anything? Any closing words? It could be anything at all. So.
That's another podcast. State of the industry. I will say this. I told students this for 12 years when I was in higher education. The only type of person that can't probably find a happy career in the hotel business is if you're genuinely somebody that doesn't like to see people be happy. Otherwise, you can find a job doing a variety of things. Our industry hires people that specialize in marketing, data analysis, operations, service. But no matter what, every one of those jobs has a target of a happy person on the end, mm-hmm. right? Even in revenue management, our goal is to sell the right product at the right price for the right time via the right distribution channel to maximize profit for our customer. Mm-hmm. But that also has to be at a price point that the end user and client meets their needs, right? And satisfaction. So that's encouraging. As far as a brief part on state of the industry that I am passionate about, there are 3 people groups that I believe have been negatively impacted by the evolution of our industry, and that is owners, team members, and guests. And the reason that is, we used to have and still do a large industry. In most states, hospitality is the second or third largest industry in that state. Yeah. Huge center of outbound tax revenues for municipalities and gets a lot of attention. The challenge is 30 years ago when I got into the industry, it was large like that, but it was mostly small business. These days, our industry has turned into Wall Street, large corporations, real estate investment trusts, all the major brands are publicly traded companies. So what you have is this shift of priority.
Mm-hmm.
And the people, in my opinion, over the last 20, 25 years that have been left behind are owners, team members, and guests. Now, not all owners. Some owners are well served by the model we have. Team members is probably where I'm most passionate about. I feel like we've lost a lot of great human capital and valuable team members from our industry.
Yeah, especially on property operations.
That you see it biggest there for sure. My family, we went to a church conference within our church a couple weeks ago, and it was in a hotel in the company that I used to manage hotels for a decade before I got into education. And I had very high hopes and positive memories of this hotel. And the quality of service has gone down, and I see it in hotels a lot.
Yeah.
And it's a professionalism that is a spirit of hospitality that's changing. And a lot of it is because those priorities have shifted to shareholder value, not worker value, not employee value. And there's some of us that are just diehard hospitality people that aren't going anywhere. And I'm passionate about creating work environments that attract that talent back to hospitality. And I think companies like Lighthouse, companies like ours, we provide those environments and opportunities. We really do. So that's extremely important to me. And, within our company at FUSED, we have very little turnover. Our team members stay with us, and we have great, I would say, culture values. We only see each other in person like once a year because everybody's all over this country. But the leaders of our company, Danielle and Amanda, do a great job of connecting our team together, promoting good work culture, even though everybody works from home. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I would say that's something I'm passionate about. And so all of the companies I've created answer an owner, team member, or guest challenge in a variety of ways. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Nice. Very well said. And I agree. I agree with all of it. Cool. Well, David, I want to thank you for your time. I know you're a busy guy and you got places to go, but I want people to, if you enjoyed this interview and want to learn more about David and his company, I'll put that up on the screen now so you guys can go check out his website for FUSED Topline. And cool. I think that's a wrap for today, and I'll let you get back to your day.
Sounds great. Thanks, Daniel. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.